I'm going to draw for the next few minutes from several sources. I'm going to draw from my most recent book, which you see on the screen behind you, which is entitled Kids Who Outwit Adults, forward by the actor Matt Damon. And those of you who are not familiar with the book, I'll give you a little backstory. 10 years ago or so, the movie Good Will Hunting came out. And if you haven't seen the movie Good Will Hunting, it's really a movie about anomie, loneliness, anger, but it's also a movie about potential and about friendships and about ability. And as I saw the movie, which was co-written by Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, I reflected upon my own life growing up in the foster care system and living on the streets. And I called my mentor, Larry Bruntrow, and I said, Larry, we should do something together based on this movie Good Will Hunting. We were at a conference in New York City, much like this conference, and we're sitting around our table sharing our work, our professional work. And Larry and I were saying that we're doing some work based on this movie Good Will Hunting. And we said to a couple of our colleagues at the conference who we just met, have you heard of the movie Good Will Hunting? And they started laughing at us. Of course, we didn't know what the inside joke was. And we said, what's up with that? And the one woman said, you don't know who this is, do you? We said, no. This is Matt Damon's mother, Dr. Nancy Carlson Page. And Nancy is an educator at Lesley University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And as we got to know Nancy, she encouraged us to write a book based upon our perceptions. And this book contains case studies and strategies for working with challenging young people in educational settings. We all have atavism in this audience. And what an atavism is, it's a characteristic that for you was adaptive. It worked. It got you to your goals. It made you successful in your environment. It's something that you use to accomplish some goals and get you where you want to go. Unfortunately, for many of us, we don't get rid of these atavisms. And so as we grow up, we still keep using them, unbeknownst to us. And so what was successful when you were 10 or 12 or 15 or 20 isn't necessarily successful when you're 25 or 30 or 35 or 40 or however. It doesn't work anymore. We still keep using it. And I share this with you because when we talk about equity in the classroom, a lot of our young people are using strategies that to us seem counterproductive. They seem antisocial, they seem distancing, they seem anti-academic. We wonder why. Because when you smile, you're sending out an invitation. The invitation is, I'm friendly, I want to get to know you, I like you, let's talk, let's connect. You're sending the opposite message. Leave me alone, stay away, I'm mean, I'm angry, I'm not trustworthy, I might hurt you. And your brain, you have something in your brain called the amygdala, that picks up on those messages instantaneously. And so, since your brain would rather have you be alive than be a good teacher, your brain's going to keep you at bay. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to smile at you all one time, and now I'm done for the day. Okay. So if you see me not smiling, it's not that I don't like you. It's just I have to actually go into a meeting. When I walk into the doors here, I have to actually stop and say, John, smile, because I forget to smile. So it's an atavism. Another example of an atavism, you guys that are my age, remember this? Groovy 70 leisure suit guy? He still wears that to the bar. It doesn't work. It didn't work then, doesn't work now. Okay. So I talked earlier about the idea that equity of opportunity is kind of the partner with equity in the classroom. And when we talk about equity in the classroom, you all know this. I think it's our obligation to spread the word, though. So we know what I'm about to say, but we've got to spread the word differently. When we talk about equity of opportunity, it requires that we do business differently. I'm not talking about a government handout. I'm talking about fundamentally controlling what we can control and changing how we do business. And the first order of business is how we look at how young people behave. And our tendency when we look at behavior is to look at behavior as an end in and of itself, as if it came from no place. And speaking as a kid who spent time in 18 different foster homes, let me tell you, behavior comes from someplace. And so when we engage young people, when we talk to them, when we work with them, when we try and support them, the first thing we have to recognize is that behavior has these kind of dimensions to it. The first thing we talk about is that behavior is a symptom. And if we start to look at all behavior as symptomatic of something, we become investigators. We change our mode of operandi. We change our actions. We change how we see behavior. So behavior is coming from some place, either internal or external. And you know, when we talk about symptomology, we talk about both positive symptoms and negative symptoms. And that I don't hear people say much. In fact, I think I'm the only person that consistently says this, is that all schools are successful for some students. Even the most failing of schools, the poorest of schools, the most downtrodden of schools, there are some students that come out of those schools and do well. So for those students, somehow, in partnership with their parents, with the schools, with people that care about them, with mentors, something in their environment has created for them at least equity of opportunity, which means they have equity in the classroom. So the first thing we look at is behavior as a symptom of something. It's either a symptom of the environment or something internal. But as we investigate the behavior, we start to look at it through that lens. The second thing we talk about with behavior is it's a form of communication. Now that's self-evident, but we often don't look at people trying to communicate to us through their behavior because we tend to think we're supposed to communicate either in writing or orally, right? But if you think about it, and this has happened to me once in a while, it's probably happened to you all. So you're at home, okay? And you're with people you know, and people you love, and people that love you. And someone in your home environment is walking around the house, and they're stomping, and they're slamming doors, and they're closing doors so you can't come in and find them. And they're doing things. And we're pretty smart people. We say, something's wrong. And so we go up to our partner or our friend or our spouse, and we say something like, what's wrong?
Nothing.
Right, nothing. So we kind of slink away, right? We slink away, and we kind of watch what happens. And what happens, they're still slamming doors and going into the room to eat by themselves and watching TV alone. And so after 20 minutes, we get the courage up, we say, what's wrong?
Nothing.
Okay, so eventually the third or fourth time you say what's wrong and you get exploded upon, right? So you've done something, okay, we'll fix it. But the real issue is that here you are in an intimate relationship with a spouse, a partner, a friend, something like that. You have good communication skills, we have confidence, we have good articulation, and yet in spite of all of that, someone isn't articulating to us what's on their mind. Now, when we go back to this notion of equity in the classroom, we're talking about students who don't have such good communication skills, who don't have articulation skills, who don't have confidence, who may not trust you, who don't have the kind of life experiences that would allow them to be successful in our environment. And we wonder why they're doing what they're doing. We think they're just being, jerks. So the real issue is what are they saying to us and how can we find out? I tell my research students to use, we use the term triangulation, right? If it looks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and has DNA like a duck, it's probably what? It's probably a duck. So we look at behavior the same way we triangulate, try and figure out what's going on. The third thing is all behavior is goal-directed. Again, that's self-evident, but we've got to reprogram our brains into how we're looking at behavior. Why are people doing what they're doing, and how can we figure out what goals they're trying to accomplish? Let's be realistic about this. Sometimes the goals they're trying to accomplish are antisocial. Sometimes they're anti-academic. Sometimes they're maladaptive. Regardless, we've got to understand what those goals are. And the fourth thing is, we'll talk about this in some detail, it's an attempt to meet real or imagined unmet needs. Now, one thing that fascinates me about educational reform is that I don't hear a lot of discussion about meeting young people's developmental needs. And what are their developmental needs? And how do we meet them successfully? And what I would suggest to you is that if we're going to meet the needs of young people, their developmental needs, we've got to be intentional, we've got to be mindful, we've got to be strategic, we've got to have a plan. We just can't, my own journey here, as Elena mentioned, I went through a number of foster homes. My own journey here is what I call luck and pluck. I was lucky and plucky. But we know enough now about youth development that we don't have to rely on luck and pluck to help students be successful in the classroom. We've got to be intentional and mindful and strategic.